Despite your cleanliness, your body is teeming with bugs. In fact, this has been known for a long time, but it's only recently that scientists have discovered that these bacteria and other organisms that live within us, collectively called the human microbiome, actually aren't just getting a free ride. These bugs, particularly the bacteria, play a pivotal role in health, regulating virtually every aspect of our physiology and metabolism. They regulate our immunity. They control the degree of inflammation in the body. They make vitamins. In fact, these bacteria manufacture chemicals called neurotransmitters, things like serotonin and dopamine, that help determine whether we are happy or sad, joyful or depressed. They regulate our appetite. And this is all relatively new science. In fact, 90% of all the scientific literature describing the microbiome has only been published in just the past 5 years. Your body contains over 100 trillion bacteria living in the gut. And in fact, they outnumber your own cells by a factor of 10 to 1, meaning that on a cellular level, you are 90% bacteria. Now, most medical therapies are squarely focused and dedicated to studying only the effects of the 10% of our cells that are actually our own bodies. And that ignores the other 90% of the cells in our bodies. And when we talk about genetics, the science is even more compelling. In fact, 99% of all the DNA in the human body is bacterial, not the DNA that you got from mom and dad and from your ancestors. And yet, genetics research that promised to hold the keys to great medical breakthroughs for all of our maladies focuses only on the DNA that we inherit, not the vast information in the DNA in the gut bacteria. Meaning that genetics research is focused on only 1% of the DNA in the body, ignoring the other 99%. The World Health Organization has recently indicated that non-communicable diseases are now the #1 category of health issues globally. That means these are diseases that are not infectious. They're not spread from one person to the next. These diseases are the chronic degenerative conditions, things like coronary artery disease, obesity, diabetes, and also things like Alzheimer's, autism, and even cancer. What do these diseases that have such a huge global impact have in common? They are all inflammatory conditions. Yes, inflammation underlies all of these degenerative conditions, and gut bacteria play a pivotal role in regulating inflammation throughout the body, from the brain to the heart, to the joints, and even to the skin. Our most well-respected medical and research institutions are now clearly correlating changes in the gut bacteria, changes in the microbiome, to these and other degenerative conditions. Think of it. Correlating changes in the gut bacteria to brain disorders, skin disorders, arthritis, cancer, and even asthma. And the World Health Organization has emphasized that it is these conditions that are front and center on the global stage. And these relate to changes in the gut bacteria. So, what's going on here, and what can we do to ensure that we have a healthy gut bacteria, since it's playing such an important role in our health? The first step is to recognize that our gut bacteria is something originally given to us by our mothers at the time of our birth. When a newborn has passed through mother's birth canal, that child has received an inoculation of fantastic bacteria, covering its face, getting into its nose, into its mouth. These bacteria are the seeds that set the stage for that child's microbiome. When a child is deprived of that rite of passage through the birth canal and is born by cesarean section, then his or her microbiome is made up of the bacteria that happened to be in the operating room or that were on the surgeon's gown or gloves. And that's a far different microbiome. And this might well explain why children born by cesarean section have twice the risk of being diagnosed with autism, 3 times the risk of being diagnosed with ADHD, and have significantly increased risk of autoimmune conditions like celiac disease and type 1 diabetes. They even have a 50% increased risk for becoming obese as adults. Another powerful issue in terms of the microbiome are antibiotics. a dramatic health concern. In fact, the World Health Organization now indicates that overusage of antibiotics represents one of the top 3 health concerns of this decade. Why? Well, we're all pretty familiar with the notion that abusing antibiotics paves the way for what are called resistant organisms, or superbugs, and these are bacteria for which we can't develop any treatments. But in addition, we know that antibiotics have a dramatic effect on the microbiome. These broad-spectrum antibiotics are weapons of microbial destruction. They permanently change the microbiome. Now, make no mistake about it, there's certainly a time and place for antibiotics. They are life-saving, but all of our most well-respected peer-reviewed medical journals are clearly lined up in letting us know that we are absolutely overusing antibiotics. And it's also interesting to note that 75% of the antibiotics used in America actually go into raising livestock. Antibiotics are given to livestock animals because it makes them fatter, and new research is indicating that that might be happening in humans as well. So keep in mind that changes in the microbiome lead to changes in immune function. And we depend upon our immune system to get rid of abnormal cells like cancer cells. How incredible it is that a very powerful study appearing in the well-respected Journal of the American Medical Association way back in 2004 showed that women with the highest usage of antibiotics had about a 40% increased risk of breast cancer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the antibiotics cause the breast cancer, but clearly the relationship between antibiotics and changing the gut bacteria, which control immunity, may be playing a role. As the author stated, quote, "The hypothesis that some classes of antibiotics may increase risk of breast cancer is plausible. Antibiotics have effects on intestinal microflora and on immune and inflammatory responses," end quote. Next, it's fundamentally important to understand the critical role of diet in terms of shaping the microbiome. One recent study compared gut bacteria in children living in sub-Saharan Africa in a country called Burkina Faso with an identical aged group of children living in Western Europe. Now, these children were pretty much genetically very similar, but their microbiomes were vastly different. Not because they were genetically different, but because the diets were very, very different. We now have technology that allows us to look at the microbiome of our ancestors living as far back as 8,000 years ago. Scientists are able to recover the DNA of gut bacteria from fossilized fecal material called coprolites. These studies indicate that the microbiome, the gut bacteria of our ancestors, is very similar to the microbiome of people living today in very rural environments. So we understand then that our food choices are very, very important. So, what can you do to have the most effective, the most diverse, the most health-supportive microbiome you can? Number 1. Avoid antibiotics unless they are absolutely necessary. Antibiotics are life-sustaining, life-saving, but we clearly know that they are overused and threaten the microbiome. Number 2, understand that how we have our children, how they are delivered, plays a critical role in the development of their microbiomes. Understand that at the moment of birth, a vast array of information in the form of bacteria is passed along to that baby, in the form of the DNA contained in those bacteria. This transfer of genetic information through bacteria at the time of birth is seen in all animals that are born like mammals, but also in birds, in reptiles, in fish, and even in marine sponges. So this transfer of genetic information at the time of birth is a process that's been going on for hundreds of millions of years. Next, food is critical. Choose organic, antibiotic-free food whenever you can. The diet that is most nurturing for the gut bacteria is a diet that's low in sugar and welcomes to the table fiber-rich foods, especially fibers that are prebiotic fibers. Prebiotic fiber are a unique type of fiber that actually nurtures the health of gut bacteria. Foods that are high in this special type of fiber, called prebiotic fiber, are foods like jicama, or Mexican yam, Jerusalem artichoke, dandelion greens, garlic, onion, leeks, and even asparagus. It's been estimated that our hunter-gatherer forebears would consume as much as 125 grams of prebiotic fiber each day, whereas these days the average American is only consuming 5 grams of prebiotic fiber. Finally, in terms of food, consider increasing your consumption of fermented foods. These are foods that have undergone the process of fermentation and are teeming with life-supportive, health-supportive bacteria. And these include foods like kimchi, a traditional Korean fermented cabbage, cultured yogurt, sauerkraut, fermented vegetables, and kefir. And finally, I think it's a good idea to supplement yourself with a high-quality, broad-spectrum probiotic. While it's true that the human gut contains over 10,000 species of gut bacteria, research has clearly identified a core group of powerfully meaningful gut bacteria that can, in fact, improve health and have a huge impact on maintaining health. And these include organisms like Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Bifidobacterium longum, and others.